Hello, my name is Dr. Ruthie, Dr. Ruth Newstifter if you want to be formal. I'm a professional sexuality educator. You can find more about me over at exploringintimacy.com, and that's also where I blog. I'm the author of The Nice Girl's Guide to Talking Dirty. But today I'm here thanks to the fantastic folks at funwares.com who make this whole video series possible and allow me to answer your questions on sex and relationships that you send to me by email at AskDrRuathie@funwares.com. See it right down at the bottom of your screen. Or if you got a short one, you can send it to me on Twitter at DrRuthie, DrRuthie. I have a fantastic question that came in from email and I am excited to answer it. So, I can't really tell whether the writer is male or female, but we can tell who they're interested in by the email here. I've always found the idea of face sitting pretty sexy, though I've only seen it done in videos and never tried it. There's a girl I like who I've been getting close to who's curvy and has a rather big butt among with other sexy features. I want to ask her to face sit me and really get into it by grinding on my face, but I wanted to check if it's safe to do. Fantastic question. So is face sitting sexy? But before we even get into it, let's make sure we're all on the same page and we all know what face sitting is. So basically, if you haven't already Googled it at this point in the video, face sitting is oral sex, usually given to a female, where the partner who's giving the oral sex is typically laying on their back on the floor, on the bed, or massage table, or wherever they are, and she is straddling the giver's face or sitting directly on it if it's like a massage table or a footrest or something where her legs can hang off the side, and really kind of grinding her body into the giver who's giving oral sex to her. So a lot of people really like this fantasy. Of course, not everybody does, so it's up to you, and what you are into. But one of the things that people tend to like about it is the female who's receiving the oral sex is usually seen as really like going for her own pleasure, really working it and very into it and active and involved in it and kind of using her partner for her pleasure in a mutually consensual way, of course. So that's what face sitting is. So your question is it safe to do? Well, there's two different, ways I could interpret your question, so I will do my best to answer both. One, is it safe from an injury sort of perspective? And I do get a lot of questions with different women on top positions, can I get injured? So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. The other way this could be interpreted is from a sexually transmitted infection perspective, which is also a really good point. So I'm going to do the infection perspective first, and then we're going to talk about injuries. You can get certain sexually transmitted infections from oral sex. Sorry to break the news to you if you didn't know already. But if you've been watching the news at all over the last couple of years, you've been learning that there's some really nasty things that can be related to throat cancer and all sorts of unpleasantries that can be transmitted from giving oral sex. And in fact, any kind of skin-to-skin contact carries a risk of sexually transmitted infections of diseases that are transmitted from skin to skin. So in order to be at risk, what would have to happen is that your partner has a sexually transmitted infection that they can give you, and that you're not using a barrier, or you didn't use it effectively, or the itty-bitty chance that the barrier failed if you did use it effectively. So one of the things you can do is go ahead and get tested ahead of time and make sure you get the full scan of tests. And you know what? If you're going to ask your partner to do it, you should be doing it too. You should be doing it whether your partner's doing it or not, because you should be having regular tests for sexually transmitted infections. Ask them to do the same and share your paperwork. And that way you can learn the status of your partner. Now, these tests are not 100% fail-safe. There is a tiny possibility they could miss something. What's more likely is certain infections don't show up for a while. So if they just got the infection, it may not actually show on the test. So it's not 100%, but it's a heck of a lot better than guesswork. And trust me, you cannot tell if your partner has an infection just by looking at them or by asking them. Generally speaking, people don't think they have infections, or they want to believe they don't have an infection, or they don't think they're the kind of person who has an infection. But that guess is not based on fact. It's sort of like when somebody seems to have a cold and they go, oh, don't worry, it's not contagious. Well, how do you know? Unless you find out from your doctor that that cold isn't contagious, you're just saying that because you hope and believe that that's true. The same thing goes with sexually transmitted infections. Oh, of course I don't have anything. Well, how do you know? When was the last time you were tested, and did you get the full run of testing done, not just HIV testing, but everything? So that's the first step, is to definitely make sure of that. Now, the reason I'm really saying that before I talk about protection is because with this kind of position, it can be really difficult to use a good barrier. So what you would need is a dental dam, or according to some sex educators, you can use some plastic wrap, and I've talked about that in previous videos. It has been tested for certain STIs, but not all of them. But there's reason to believe that it works well. So, you know, it's certainly better than nothing. So you can use a barrier like that. The problem is keeping it in place well. A nice thing with plastic wrap is that you can kind of plastic wrap the area and kind of turn into like a plastic wrap G-string sort of thing, so that it holds itself on. Otherwise it's going to be difficult to keep in place, truly. So I would really recommend I always recommend a barrier, but definitely exchanging test results for this sort of activity. So that covers sexually transmitted infections. Oh, and can she get anything from the giver? Absolutely. If you have oral herpes, that's something you can submit. You can actually give to your partner that way through the giving of oral sex, and and it's not the only skin to skin out there. So. All right, let's talk about injuries and positions. Now, the first thing is that if we think about it logically, if she is kneeling, chances are, unless she's crazy into yoga or something else that makes her flexible, she's probably, got a little height even when she's kneeling, with her pelvis down as far as she can get it. I'm trying to say this as delicately as I can here, folks. So she has control over her elevation as long as her feet or her knees are touching the surface, so that she can move up and down with that. So what it means is just setting up a little system so that she can become aware if she needs to rise up, or the position is somehow uncomfortable for you, or if she's really getting down on there, you need to get a breath or something like that. And a lot of people just use a system of taps. If I tap you on the outside of your thigh 3 times or something, or a couple of times, or frantically or whatever, that means you need to move up, check in with me and see how it's going. If anything is uncomfortable, then you can go ahead and use that method of letting her know. Just make sure whatever you set up is something she's sure to notice, and something you're not going to do just spontaneously when you're not trying to get a message across. I suggest against anything to do with like moaning or talking, because you're not going to hear it very well. It could get mixed in with other sounds as well. So a system like that, and using it well, and making sure that you trust each other to use that communication, should really take care of most of your problems. Now, if you're set up in some sort of, high off the ground situation where her knees are not, on anything, and her feet are not on anything, so her full weight is on you, yeah, there could definitely be some risk. Your nose is not that strong, and, you're not able, neither of you are able to maneuver well. So, yeah, I don't exactly know how you'd set that up, but I really trust my viewers to be creative, so I would say, kind of avoid that, or plan ahead for that sort of scenario. So yeah, there's no reason not to do it from an injury perspective, as long as you have good communication going back and forth. You have your little taps or whatever it is that you figured out. Have fun. This can be a wonderful form of sex, or a wonderful form of foreplay, however you choose to use it. And, make sure it's something that she's into and she wants to be there for. Make sure that you're speaking with her about what she would like to get out of it, if this is something she likes, so that it's not just you bringing your assumptions about how it would go into the scenario. Of course you think you know how it would go because you fantasized about it and you have your assumptions, but the other person is coming from a whole different set of assumptions and fantasies, so we want to communicate about it ahead of time so that it's good for everybody. I'm Dr. Ruthie. Have fun, and I will see you at the next video.